research designs. This is interrupted time series with a non-equivalent. Interrupted time series with a non-equivalent, no treatment comparison group time series. So interrupted time series with a non-equivalent, no treatment comparison group, no treatment to the comparison group, and the groups are not equivalent. So the groups are not equivalent, and also there would be interruption in with regard to the observation for the observation purposes. So this kind of group is known as interrupted time series with a non-equivalent, no treatment comparison. There would be comparison group, for that there would not be any treatment. That what we call it as interrupted time series with a non-equivalent, no treatment comparison group time series. This is also a time series kind of research design, and at different times you are going to observe the changes that are occurring in the different variable. So this design is similar to the non-equivalent comparison group design, which we studied earlier also, with the exception that multiple time series measures of the different variable are taken. Now you are going to take multiple observations. Multiple observations, there will be many observations. There may be more than 3 or 4 or 5 observations at different timings that are occurring in the different variable as a result of some kind of treatment. And again, you can also find in that 116 page number, observation 1, observation 2, 3, 4, 5. And these observations will be made for forming the baseline. And then after the baseline, you are going to give the treatment. X is the treatment or intervention. We can also call it as intervention. So therefore, after the intervention or otherwise experimental group, then you find again you will be taking, after the intervention will be again taken the readings or observations, that is observation 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Similarly, for the control group also there would be observations before the intervention, like that of the experimental group, and also after, during the process of this intervention, the observations would also be made in the comparison group. So I think there would be observations not only in the experimental group, but also comparison group at different timings. But only difference is you are giving treatment to one group and you are not giving any treatment to the other group. That's the reason why that particular group is meant for only comparison purposes. So this is known as interrupted time series. Interrupted, not continuously observing. At different times, you are observing the changes in the dependent variable. Here, the groups are not equivalent. Also, there would not be any treatment to the comparison group. No treatment to the comparison group, but there would be treatment to the experimental group. And the observations would be made in the experimental and control groups at different timings. A series of observations would be made. That's why you can call it as time series. So I think here they have given, after establishing the baseline will be established even before conducting the experiment or otherwise before giving the treatment or any intervention. Before introducing the intervention, then the researcher would be taking the observations in the experimental group as well as the control group. Then there would be intervention which would be introduced only to the experimental group. Then during that process, you would also be taking the observations, or you would be observing the process at different times and maybe noting down the changes. So the researcher would be making down the changes by observing at different times. This would also be made for experimental group as well as control group. Then finally, you are going to compare the changes that are occurring as a result of intervention in the experimental group. And when there is no intervention for the other group, then what are the changes that are occurring? Then you try to compare the observations or the scores of this experimental group and the control group. So therefore, this is interrupted time series with non-equivalent. The groups are not equivalent, and there would not be any treatment to the comparison group, and the observations will be made at a different timings. So the title itself indicates interrupted time series with a non-equivalent, no treatment comparison group time series. So this is all about some of the quasi-experimental research designs. Now let us move into the non-experimental or correlation designs. Non-experimental or correlational designs. Here there would not be an experimental. So far we have seen the experimental designs, quasi-experimental designs, and now we are moving into the non-experimental designs or correlational research designs, correlational research designs. Here you are trying to understand the relationship between the two variables. Any variable is able to influence the other variable, or is it related to the other variable? So for understanding this correlation between the variables or among the variables, we try to use this correlational research design. Hello, friends. Is it audible? Hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're audible.
Okay, no problem. But why the participants are not, visible on the screen? Am I visible at least?
Sir.
Am I visible?
You're visible, sir.
But you are not visible on the screen. Only I could see your names. Is there any option for that to see all the faces of the participants? No?
Yes, sir. But the thing is
Any
like.
option? There are only 13 participants who are sitting there. Yes. Who is that? You are not
Option is
clear.
this.
Your head on. Yeah. Now you are clear. You are?
Option is this, sir. But the thing is like the data won't be supporting sometimes. So that is the only reason we don't want to miss any of the
But
important.
from my side is I want to see how the participants are acting and reacting when the lesson is in progress. I want to see their feelings. But I'm sorry, I'm not able to see you at all. Anyway,
No
it's all
problem.
right. Thank
No
you.
problem.
At least some of you are able to come onto the screen. Your name is
Ushan, sir.
Usasri, na?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Usasri, you are only reacting. Huh? And I request all the members to also react, It's not Usasri alone. Well, friends, so far we have seen the experimental designs and also quasi-experimental designs. Now we are moving into the details of correlational research designs, or in other words, we can also call it as non-experimental research design. Yes, there would not be any experiment at all. Unlike other research designs, this is something different where you do not have any kind of experiment, but you are trying to observe the changes that are occurring in the two variables. How they are occurring, that's all. You cannot manipulate. Here you are not going to manipulate or bring any changes in the variables, but you are just observing what is happening with regard to these two variables. Okay, na? So therefore, you are trying to study the relationship between the variables. That kind of relationship, in other words, we can also call it as correlation, whether these two things are correlated or related on certain issues. How far they are related or not related, that is our concern. So those two variables which will be correlated means related. Here there is no experiment at all. Is interested to examine the relation between, say, example is, the research is interested to examine the research relation between test anxiety and academic performance. This would be a non-experimental design, as he is not manipulating any variable. So one variable is test anxiety. I think all of you may be taking the examination very soon in research methodology paper.
Yes, sir.
Before the
Yes.
examination, I would like to study your anxiety levels. That is known as text anxiety. I think there will be many things that are happening in your body. Am I right? In your thinking, your mind, body, just before the examination. your anxiety levels. If I study those anxiety levels, we can call it as test anxiety. Within a few minutes, you are going to give the examination. Before that, your anxiety levels will be measured. That is known as test anxiety. So, and the scores on this test anxiety will be correlated with the academic performance scores. So first, before giving the examination, your test anxiety will be measured through a scale or a tool which will be developed for that particular purpose. For measuring test anxiety, there are many tools also which are available in the net also. So that kind of tool will be administered to the students who are going to give the examination the next moment. Then after completion of the examination, then we value all the skills of the students, then we get the marks. Then we try to compare the scores that are obtained by the students in the examination and the scores that are obtained by the student with regard to their anxiety, with regard to their test anxiety. So here you are correlating these two scores. You are correlating the students of their anxiety scores as well as academic scores. Correlating or relating whether this test anxiety is related to academic performance of the students. If the higher the test anxiety level, the higher would be the academic score also. I do not know. We have to test it. Some of you can also take up this kind of test. Sasri, if you are interested, you just take up this kind of study. I do not know whether you have any project work or anything related to this MSc Psychology. Do you have any project work?
Not yet, sir.
You don't have any project work.
We
Normally,
only
there
have
would be some
assignments.
dissertation work in some of the courses. For example, MD course is there. We have dissertation work, a research problem. A small research problem has to be conducted or undertaken by a student. He has to conduct a study. So that is a small research which is attached to certain courses. And earlier in psychology also there would be some kind of project work or dissertation works. As part of those dissertation works, you have to take up a studies. And this is one of the studies. It's a very small study. You can also take up the anxiety versus the academic performance. Is there any relationship between the test anxiety and the academic performance of the students? That is the whether there is any relationship between the test anxiety and the academic performance of the students. If you are interested to publish any paper in the journals, you can also take this kind of studies. Normally, I think if you want to get recognition, that is Usasri, of course, is also doing some kind of research. If you want to know other by somebody that Usasri is also doing research work, and I think you also get some kind of VTs during the interviews if you publish such kind of papers. So, for publication purposes also you can take up studies, anxiety versus academic performance. So I think you are trying to see whether there is any relationship between test anxiety and the academic performance. So under this, the longitudinal design is one of the research designs under non-experimental research designs. Longitudinal research design, because the length of the research would be very high. It may be 4 years or 5 years or 6 years also. And most of the cases you try to understand the developmental, the changes that are occurring in the children over a period of time, or the relationship between the mother and the child also over a period of time. If you observe the changes that are occurring in the growth or the development of the child over a period of time, we can also call it as longitudinal research. Because the length of the research is too much, in the sense it may be 5 years or 6 years. Over a period of time, if you observe the changes, and then if you come up with some kind of conclusions or recommendations, that would be longitudinal design. For example, you can use longitudinal design to study how the strategies that children use to remember things change as they get older. So from young age to the older age, with regard to their remembering power or remembrance, how this will take place. If you ask me, I think I'm also equally losing my remember or memory power also. I'm observing, there would be some kind of memory loss, or otherwise the memory power may not be that as you go or as the age increases. So such kind of studies you can also take up. To do so, you could follow a single group of children over a period of several years. For that purpose, for studying the remembrance power of the people, you can take up a group of children over a period of several years, testing their memory strategies when they were 4 years, 8 years, and 12 years. That means you are supposed to observe the changes with regard to their memory power at the age of 4 and the same at the age of 8 and the age of 12. What is their memory power? How is it? Whether there is an increase or a decrease with regard to their memory power. Isn't it? So such kind of almost is a 12-year study. 12-year study. Meanwhile, what will happen? In some cases, the researcher may also kick the bucket, or otherwise the children will also kick the bucket. Who knows? That's the reason why longitudinal studies, the disadvantage is that the researcher may also lose the soul, or the person who is responding may lose. So that is one of the disadvantages. And of course, for studying the developmental changes, we take up this kind of longitudinal research design. Okay. The advantages is that extraneous variables can be controlled by taking a homogeneous group and studying them. Now you can take up a homogeneous group. There would not be any heterogeneous group. If homogeneous group with the same age and other things are equal, then automatically you don't find much intervention of the extraneous variables. There may be some kind of very little kind of intervention, but you can also control to the maximum extent in this particular longitudinal research design the effect of the extraneous variables. Also permit more in-depth. Yes, this is the in-depth research study, because you are spending more time in studying the changes that are occurring in the children or in the human beings, the clients who are the target group for your research. So over a period of time, your studying means it's completely an in-depth study. You are trying to understand many factors associated with the developmental changes also. So very in-depth and valid inferences regarding the developmental changes in the participants. So I think this longitudinal research design is, of course, accepted for those people who study in-depth, who try to take up the in-depth studies. Over a period of time, they can also conduct such research. So for them, they prefer this kind of longitudinal research design. The disadvantage is that the homogeneous and thus controlling the extraneous effects, the longitudinal nature of the study allows many other events. Yes, there would be, because since there is a long, lengthy time, there will be many other things which would also be affecting the process. Maybe extraneous variables or other factors, because during these 12 years, there would be many other things which would also be entering into the process. So up to 12 years, if there is a study means there would also be other factors which would also be going into the individuals. So that is one of the disadvantages of this, and some of these people may or not. Of course, they will lose their life also at times. We cannot say that they will continue for that also, and don't expect that these people will lose their life. Next one is cross-sectional design. So under this correlational studies, we have seen this longitudinal research design. Over a period of time, you are conducting or observing the changes that are occurring in the individuals. Then cross-sectional design. This cross-sectional design means this is unlike longitudinal, which requires multiple data collection at a different time points. Multiple data collection at a different time points. Cross-sectional design requires one shot data collection at a single time point. That's the difference. Because you are taking or collect the data at a single point time, not many times. Single shot, you are getting the data. single attempt you are getting the data of the individuals. The example is, for example, if you want to understand this cross-sectional research design, if you want to see the, say this one, yeah, for example, the researcher wants to examine anxiety in adolescents using a cross-section design. Using this particular design, you are trying to understand the or examine the anxiety in the adolescents. He may select 3 groups of participants. A researcher may take up 3 groups of participants who are in the adolescence stage. Adolescence means who are there between 12 to 18 years in the Indian context, isn't it?
Yes,
So
sir.
you have to take up 3 adolescent groups. They are early adolescents, maybe 12 to 14 years, and middle adolescents, 14 plus to 16 years, and 16 plus to 18 years, the late adolescents. These are the 3 adolescents group you are trying to understand on which this anxiety level, who is having more anxiety levels. For studying these anxiety levels on these 3 groups, test their anxiety levels and compare the scores to see whether anxiety increases or decreases in particular adolescence stage. So you can test the anxiety of the first early adolescents, isn't it? Maybe at the age of 14, then middle adolescents at the age of 16, and then late or otherwise you can take up. You need not wait for that much, but you can have these 3 groups. Already 3 groups will be simultaneous there. A group with having early adolescence, then middle adolescence, the other group, another group, still another group is the late adolescence. 3 groups are available. The third one is 16 to 18 years group is available. 3 groups simultaneously there. The groups will be arranged or formed by taking those people 16 to 18 years, 14 to 16 years, and then 12 to 14 years. Then you observe or measure the anxiety levels of these 3 groups. You conduct a test, anxiety test, then get the scores of these 3 groups, then compare in which adolescent group the anxiety level is high or low. Isn't it? I think that's very easy. That's a very easy kind of research. And this is the easy research design also. At a shot you are getting or collecting the data. You need not wait for more time. So you can
But there
have 3
may be a
groups.
drawbacks, no, sir.
Yeah.
Because we are studying 3 different groups, there may be drawbacks because every individual is different.
Yeah, certainly. There would be drawbacks also for every research design. Advantages, disadvantages would also be there. Similarly, individual differences would also be there. There may be other factors. Say, for example, if you are taking up 16 to 18 years, isn't it? There would be many changes that are occurring in those adolescent age group, isn't it? Physical body, in the body structure, there would be many changes. Height change, weight change, then other mental changes, emotional changes, all would also be there. But these are the, of course, certain factors, isn't it? So therefore, these cross-sectional studies can be conducted quickly and easily. You need not wait for a long time like that longitudinal research design. It is out you are getting the data, and then this is preferable for that purpose, isn't it? Immediately, if you want to know the changes, you get some kind of inference with all the disadvantages that we have. At least you get some kind of inference. Am I right or wrong? So 3. Yes,
Yes, sir.
isn't yes. So with all the disadvantages, certainly you are going to get some kind of information about this kind of testing. For that purpose, you can prefer this cross-sectional research design, isn't it? Where there is no experimentation at all. Then next one is correlational design. Correlational design. Correlational design means it's a non-experimental design. The researcher interested in studying the relationship between 2 or more variables. Here, no independent variable is manipulated. You are not going to manipulate any independent variable, isn't it? Say, for example, if the height is, say, weight or increase in the height, if the height is increasing, then would there be weight, increase in the weight or not, isn't it? So therefore, if you take up this kind of study, for example, measuring the relationship of height and weight to know whether increase in height associated with increase in weight, isn't it? So I think you can also, maybe of course, as mothers, you would be observing your own children. When there is a height, would there be any change in the weight also or not? There may be
There will be.
underweight children
There,
also, isn't it?
no, there will be, sir. There
Yes,
will be
there will be
less sugar.
underweight children
Under,
also. As a mother, you have to give very good dish to your children when the weight is not increasing, isn't it?
yes.
So therefore, these are the recommendations. After observing all these things, his weight, as per the age also, is not there. Those people, of course, who are there between the height is 6 feet. If a candidate's height is 6 feet and their weight is supposed to be ranging between 74 to 82 kgs or 80 kgs, am I right? This is only guess. My guess is those people height whose weight is or height is 6 feet, their normal weight is supposed to be ranging between 74 kgs to 80 kgs. If you find any kind of change below that or above that, you have to take care. So I think this is very good for maintaining some kind of healthy bodies, For maintaining healthy bodies, I think you are trying to understand if the weight is going up, why not the height? If the height is going, similarly, the weight should also increase, isn't it? Okay. Similarly, if I quote another example with regard to education, I think some of you are also working as teachers in the schools. Say, let us take example of students with regard to their marks with the mathematics students' scores in mathematics subject and the English subject. These are the two subjects in which we are collecting their marks. For example, 10 students you can take up in a class. Then what are the marks of these 10 students in mathematics? Similarly, what are their marks in English subject? Is there any correlation between the mathematics marks of the students and the marks in English and their marks in the English subject? Have you ever done this kind of study?
But sir, in mathematics, children can get 100 out of 100, but in English we cannot
Yeah,
give them.
you cannot get almost 99,
They,
98 nowadays, 98. In Sanskrit, it is about 100.
but
Sanskrit
in English
subject,
we cannot give, no sir, more than,
there are
because we
students who
have
got
to.
10 of 10, 10 out of
They,
10 also. Very recently I have seen. 600 by 600. Yes, it may not be in all the cases. Even then, whether there is any relation between the marks of the students' mathematics subject and English subject. Those people who got high score in mathematics subject, does that particular candidate will also be getting first rank in English subject? Let us try to understand this way. Let us rank them, isn't it? The fellow who got first rank in mathematics, is he able to get the same rank in English subject? Am I right or wrong? Maybe or may not be also. Maybe or may not be. That we have to test it. But our assumption is that those scores are very high in mathematics subject, and similarly, those students would also be equally high, getting high marks in English subject also. It may not be English or mathematics subject. It may be science subjects also. You can also compare their marks, isn't it? And if there is any correlation between these two marks of these two subjects of the students, then we can say that there is positive relation. If there is no relationship, we can say that there is no positive relation. There is negative relation, or there is no relationship at all. Like this, we have to conclude. Okay. So therefore, here, this can be divided into this correlation design is of three types. The positive correlation. Again, I'm telling you, my dear friends, the value of this correlation will range from -1 to +1 only. The value you will be getting, that value is -1 to +1 only. Thereafter, there would not be extension of or increase in that value. That is a fixed value. It would range. The correlation would range -1 to +1 only. Beyond that, you cannot get the result. Okay, na? Yes. Now this is of correlation research design of course. You can also divide into three. The positive correlation between variables. Just now how mentioned that those fellows whose mathematics marks and the English marks are correlated positively. The fellow who get first rank in mathematics, if he gets the same rank, first rank in the English subject, similarly, the second rank who gets the mathematics, if he gets second rank in English subject, that means if one variable is going up, and there would also be vertical mobility of the scores in other subject also. Vertical mobility, isn't it? One increases, the other will also increase. Then only you find positive correlation. You will find positive correlation when is moving vertically, the other would also be equally moving vertically. That is known as positive correlation. Next one is negative correlation. That means when one increases, and increase one variable leads to decrease in another and vice versa. If there is increase one variable, same may not be in the other variable. If one increases and you find decrease in other variable, that is negative correlation. If your value is minus, if your value is minus, then automatically you say that is negative correlation. There is a negative correlation existing between the variables. Okay, na? Same example, of course, can also take up the example that I cited for positive correlation. That means if the students get more marks on mathematics, and if they're getting less marks in English subject, that is negatively correlated. Am I right? One increases, the other decreases, and vice versa. Next one is no correlation. Two variables are uncorrelated when a change in one does not lead to change in the other, and vice versa. ఒక దాంట్లో చేంజ్ వచ్చినా రెండవ దాంట్లో చేంజ్ రాదు. If there is a change in one variable, that will not influence the other variable, that kind of change in the other variable, because you don't find any change in the other variable. If you don't any change in the other variable, then you can say that there is no correlation. Okay, na? These are the three types. Of course, have you done this kind of calculations in your first year? You told that this subject is included as part
Yes,
of
that's
your. Huh?
yes, sir.
Who taught you
Yeah,
that statistics during that time?
statistics was a part of a practical, sir.
It's
So
not
we
part
have
of the practicals as a subject only. No, no, no. I
no,
don't agree with that. As part of our practicals, that is not statistics. As a paper, is it included in your first year? No.
no, sir. But
Like
it
research
is
methodology paper second year, there would also be a paper on statistics. I think there is no paper,
no
right?
paper, sir. No paper.
There is no theory paper. Yes. And the disadvantage of this correlation research design is you don't get the reasons. You do not know the reasons for this. You cannot elicit the reasons out of this particular correlation research design. What are the reasons due to this positive correlation, due to negative correlation, due to no correlation? So that kind of reasons may not be elicited with this kind of research design. Unless you probe into different issues of the individuals. Isn't it? So as it is, you are just collecting the scores and then comparing whether there is any relationship or not. There only your research stops. But you are not trying to collect the reasons for getting such kind of result. That is the disadvantage of this particular correlational research design. That's all about this research designs, experimental research designs, quasi experimental research designs, and non-experimental research designs. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. But sir, what is the difference? What makes the difference to adopt non-experimental designs when we can get to know more when we are doing an
It
experiment?
all depends on
I'm
the
confused.
problem that you are selecting, Usasri Garu. It all depends on the problem. Your research problem demands experiment. Then only you have to conduct the, and most of the cases, I tell you, most of the cases in education is surveys, survey researches only. Just you collect the data from the participants, most of the case. But in psychology, laboratories are there. There you have to, of course, conduct the experiment, laboratory method. If you want to observe, I think we have seen experimental, tests, experimental research designs. So your research problem demands experimentation. Then you have to conduct the use the experimental research design. Not always. It all depends on the problem that you are going to take up. Okay. Then that's a very important, my dear friends. Block 4, sampling. What about other candidates who only Usasri is on the screen? I would like to see other candidates also on the screen. Please come up, sir. Yes. Sampling. We have also discussed a number of times about the sampling in the offline classes. Number of times. Usasri, you were not there. You said that you were not there in the offline classes. During that time, this was a threadbare discussion on sampling techniques also. That's the reason why I just want to give only light touch on sampling. So I'm going to complete this 13, 14, if possible 15 today itself. Because all these things are almost based on only statistics and then samplings only. So all these units, unit number 13 related to statistics or sampling, and also your 14th unit is also on sampling, probability sampling techniques, and also your 15th unit also related to 15th unit also related to non-probability sampling techniques. So I think otherwise, if I don't complete at least minimum 2 units in each session, I may not be doing justice to this particular job. Okay, friends, now let us try to understand the sampling. Under that, we are going to discuss population, parameters, and statistics. So I would like to touch only very lightly about all these things because already there was hectic discussion on these issues in the last classes. Then probability sampling techniques. Probability means likelihood. Likely. Probability, it may happen mostly. Then non-probability sampling techniques, it may not. Then sample size and sampling errors. Then people are talking always about the sampling size, especially during the last elections, isn't it? Assembly elections. What is the size of the sample and what is the error, sampling error? That sampling error, it seems some of those people were also mentioning minus 10 plus 10, isn't it? That is the sampling error. From the number, they are going to say out of 175 seats, assembly seats, and he has come to the conclusion that there would be 90 seats, he says, and finally what he says is minus 10 plus 10, either side. It may be 80 or it may be 100 also. That minus 10 plus 10 is due to sampling error. Hello, friends. Hello, friends, other friends who are not on the screen, for them only. I just calling, sir, am I reachable or audible? Hello, sirs and
Yes, sir.
ma'ams.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dr. Naishra. Yes, sir.
Sir, thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Nice,
Thank you.
sir. It's very nice. Now, sir, we are moving into almost a new unit or block, that is sampling. I think you were there. You have attended almost all the classes, offline classes, sir. I think during that time we have discussed certain issues related to
Yes, sir.
sampling also. But anyway, for the benefit of other participants, let us try to understand this sampling, which is given in 4 units. So this sampling, this is completed throughout 4 units, is spread over 4 units. The sampling is spread over 4 units, unit number 13, 14, 15, and 16. Now let us try to understand the population parameters and statistics. Sampling is one of the most important concepts in the study of statistics. So whenever we talk about education also, we try to use statistical parameters in the education research. Similarly, and most of the studies, including medicine also, Dr. Saab, I think you will also tell us, even medical field also, we use statistical, use of statistical elements. Similarly, physical sciences and also other social sciences also, we use this statistics. Statistics means it's only a number. It's a numerical. Statistics means it's only numerical. Numerals, numbers, those things which are connected with the numbers. Such kind of study is known as statistics. And we're going to use these numbers or associate these numbers with our data, isn't it? So our research studies, our psychological research studies, or otherwise our education research studies are also connected to the data collections. When the data, especially quantitative researches, you are going to find utility of statistical treatments. Utility of statistical treatments. Because you cannot collect the data from the total population about 150 crores, especially India. Can you collect the data from all these 150 crore population? No. That's the reason why we take only a part of this 150 crore, which we can call it as sampling. That means the properties that are contained in the population will also be seen in the bit that is taken up by you for your study. That bit is known as sampling. This sampling or sample contains all those properties which are contained in the population. Why we are referring to the sampling means we cannot study because it's a very laborious task which requires a lot of money, manpower, resources, time, vagaira and vagaira. All those things may not be there with us. That's the reason why we prefer sampling procedures. Then when it comes to population means population. Population means the people who are identified in a particular area. Specified. Population means who are specified or identified in a specified area. The persons who are identified in a specified area, which we can call it as population. Isn't it? Am I right or wrong? The well-specified and identifiable group is known as population. Is it clear, friends?
Yes, sir.
Very nice. The well-specified and identifiable group is known as population or universe. And the selected number of persons or objects is known as sample. Madam Ushasri, you are yawning.
Yes, sir.
You are yawning. Dose of diet is very much? Or there is no proper sleep in the night?
Actually, Saturday classes will be there, sir. So next, what will happen, we will come to know. So we need to
Hard
come to the
working.
class with the preparation.
No, I'm talking about yawning. Why are you
Uh,
yawning?
Lack of sleep, sir.
Yeah, there may not be sleep, or otherwise the diet may be very heavy. Hmm? No, not that, I think. Isn't it? There may be restlessness also. These are the various factors. Huh? So yawning occurs. Maybe these are the various reasons why Ushasri is yawning means, and these are the various factors for that particular yawning. Am I right? She may not be interested also in this class. Who knows? Huh?
Yes, sir.
She is
Got
not
it,
very
sir.
much serious also about the class. Come on, see, there's the various factors just now
No,
listed
she's
out.
the most serious of all.
Oh, you see, very nice. Very nice, very nice. Dr. Nageswar will be supporting Ushasri. Well, friends, sir, let us try to understand this. well-specified and identified group is known as population or universe, and the selected number of persons from that universe is known as sample. A population therefore may be defined as any identifiable and well-specified group of individuals. So a population therefore may be defined as any identifiable and well-specified group of individuals. Identifiable and specified group of individuals. So identifiable and well-specified group of individuals is defined as population. All primary school teachers, all college teachers, all university students, all housewives, all doctors are examples of population in a given area because these people are identified and this is well specified group of individuals. Am I right? Identifiable and well specified group of individuals. So we can call it as population. The first requirement in undertaking study involving the derivation of facts and principles applicable to a whole population is the selection of a representative sample of that population. The first step with regard to sampling is you have to understand thoroughly the population, the details of the population. Then you have to pick out the sample from that, which will represent the total population of the universe. If your study is on doctors, then you have to get the number of the doctors working in this Hyderabad, and there will be many doctors with different professions, but you should also confine it may be physicians, or it may be surgeons, or it may be some other. Maybe nurses or maybe knowing pretty well. Then you should also have the list of all the doctors, because doctors are our sample. Total doctors working in Hyderabad is the population. From that population, we're picking out a sample which will represent the total number of doctors who are living in Hyderabad. I'm just throwing some example, isn't it? A sample in any number of persons selected to represent the population according to some rule or plan. There should also be some plan for selecting the candidates for your sample. There should be some plan, some strategy is to be designed. Otherwise, you may be committing error. Because sample has to represent all the prerequisites, has to satisfy the qualities of the population. So properties of the population need to be fulfilled by the sample. Otherwise, it cannot be a representative sample. It may be sample, but that's not representative sample. It is not representing the total population. Yes. Now let us see other concept is parameters and statistics. The other concept that is included in this unit is parameters and statistics, a numerical characteristic of a population, such as its mean or standard deviation, is called a population parameter or simply a parameter. And even medical field also, quite often we talk about parameters. In all the parameters, they are okay. Then why this particular person lost his life? That is our question. Parameter, normally, most of the cases, we try to use parameter. In all the parameters is okay, but it's unfortunate we lost him. Isn't it? So therefore, this parameter will be connected with the population. So the word parameter is connected with population only. So parameter means it may be the mean of the population or standard deviation of the population, median, mode, average deviation, quartile deviation, skewness, kurtosis, etc., etc. These are all the values, numericals connected with the population. When these numericals are connected with the population, we can call them as parameters. Parameters. Okay, now then, yes. Then statistics, a quantity calculated from a sample, such as its mean or standard deviation. So if the sample is treated statistically, what is the mean of this particular sample? Mean score, median score, mode, value, or standard deviation, average deviation, like this. If you want to know more about all these things related to your sample, we can call it as statistics. Quantity calculated from a sample such as its mean or standard deviation is called sample statistic or simply statistic. Statistic means it's only number or numerical. Statistic is connected with the sample, whereas parameter is connected with population. Am I clear, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And most of the cases, my dear friends, statistics can be applied in the quantitative researches. Am I right? Because quantity means connected with some numericals or the numbers. You are getting some figure. When numbers or the scores or some weightages are given to your data, then you are supposed to use the statistical treatment, isn't it? So if this is quantitative study, then there would be the usage of the statistics. That doesn't mean qualitative study doesn't require statistics. Qualitative study includes quantification also at times. There's more comprehensive, highly detailed, in-depth study will come under qualitative researches. Qualitative researches means you are trying to understand even the last factor which will affect the data. That is the in-depth, comprehensive, in-detailed kind of study will come under qualitative research. Here quantitative research means mostly that is connected with numbers, figures, statistics. Okay, that's all about parameter and statistics. Now let us move into probabilistic and non-probabilistic sampling techniques. Probable and non-probable sampling techniques. Probable and non-probable sampling techniques. Probable means likelihoodness. Am I right? Probability. That means it is essential to define that.
Chance of happening.
Yeah.
Chance it might happen.
Yes, it may happen. Mostly it may happen. So probability is the base of sampling theory. Sampling theory starts with probability only. General meaning of probability is less than certain. You cannot 100% say certain. It may happen. And for which there exists some evidence. With some evidence, you say it will happen or it may happen. Not 100%. It may rain today. 100%. Is it? No. It may rain. Because certain evidence, you have some certain evidences. వాతావరణ శాఖ చెప్తుంది కదా, ఈరోజు పడవచ్చును లేకపోతే పడకపోవచ్చును, ఈరోజు ఎండ ఉంటే ఉండవచ్చును లేకపోతే ఉండకపోవచ్చును. ఓ దే ఆర్ వెరీ వెరీ ఇంటెలిజెంట్ పీపుల్, వెరీ డిప్లొమాటిక్. ఉంటే ఉండవచ్చును ఉండకపోవచ్చును, వర్షం పడితే పడవచ్చును పడకపోవచ్చును, వచ్చును వచ్చును వచ్చును, ప్రాబబిలిటీ. Yeah.
Something like this question is very important. It might appear in your
Yes.
paper.
Now you have to test it. Is it? So finally, yes, probability. Let us try to understand probabilistic and non-probabilistic sampling techniques. It may be or it may not be, isn't it? Non-probabilistic means is not, isn't it? There is no probability. When there is no probability, you can call it as non-probabilistic sampling techniques. There is no probability at all here, but probabilistic you find Not complete, but to extent, not certain, to some extent, there is probability. Probabilistic sampling methods are those that clearly specify the probability or likelihood of inclusion of each element or individual in the sample. Probability sampling methods are those that clearly specify the probability or likelihood of inclusion of each element or individual in the sample. Technically, the probability sampling methods must satisfy the conditions such as the size of the parent population, each element or individual in the population must be equal sense, then the desired sample size must be clearly specified. These are the conditions. When you talk about your probable sampling or sampling, probable sampling techniques means these are the conditions. The size of the parent population or universe from which the sample is to be taken must be known to the investigator, isn't it? Each element or individual should have the equal chance of representing the population. Similarly, the desired sample size must be clearly specified. What is desired? What is that you want to take? How much you want to take up that sample from that universe? That the researcher is supposed to know how much is required. Is he capable or not? If it is too large, it would be very difficult, isn't it? If it is too less, he cannot get perfect results. Either it should be not too large or it should not be less, very less. So adequate sampling or samples should be chosen, adequate sampling chosen through which you can get the results. It's not too large, not too less. Too large, not too less. Okay, na? So these are the conditions for this probabilistic sampling techniques. And the positive point of probabilistic sampling method is that the obtained samples are considered representative and hence the conclusions reached from samples are worth generalization and comparable to similar populations to which they belong. Isn't it? So because since this is a representative sample, because every element is almost touched or included in the sample, then you can also generalize the results. You can generalize the results. So therefore, that is the advantage of this or the positive point of this probability sampling. The negative point of probability sampling method is that a certain amount of sampling error exists because the researcher has only a limited element of the entire population. When all the elements of the population are not touched, there would be sampling error. That is the negative point, isn't it? It is the defect of the researcher or defect of the population, in the sense the population is not studied properly, right? He hasn't understood the population properly, not studied the population of the properties of population properly. So therefore, there would be negativity, in the sense negative point, because all the elements are not included in the sample. Okay, na? Major probability sampling methods are, let us try to understand the types of sampling, major probability sampling methods. What are they? Simple random sampling, stratified random sampling, which is again divided into proportionate stratified random sampling, disproportionate stratified random sampling, cluster sampling, area sampling. These are the sampling methods under probabilistic sampling techniques, isn't it? Probabilistic or probable sampling techniques. So the first one is simple random sampling. What is this simple probable random sampling technique? Let us go to this unit 14. Now we are going to explain all these sampling methods. And the explanation of all these things or narration of all these things are given in unit 14. So your 13 unit is over. Now we are switching over to 14, where the explanation of all these sampling methods are mentioned. Now this simple random sampling technique, isn't it? Simple random sampling technique means very randomly, without much effort. It may not be that much logic also. There may not be much logic in the simple random sampling technique. Am I right? Simple random sampling technique. There would not be much effort that was put in by the researcher. Random sampling, also known as unrestricted random sampling, may be defined in as one in which every item of universe has an equal chance of inclusion in the sample. You can find it in 134, page number. Is it okay? Explanation of this random sampling technique is given in our module at page 134. Random sampling technique, also known as unrestricted random sampling, may be defined in which every item has the equal chance to go into the sampling, isn't it? Also, the selection of one individual is in no way dependent upon the selection of another person. Isn't it? He is not dependent. All these individuals are having equal chance of entering the sample. Otherwise, it cannot representative sample. So it is to say a lottery method in which individual units are picked up. Just lottery method. So you can give the numbers to the population, and from that population you decide how many persons are required for your sample, isn't it? You are numbering the participants, all the population, then you are picking up using a lottery method. If you want to 10 out of 100, out of 100 is the population. Out of that, you just pick up 10. That means you have to write 100 numbers. Then you pick up only 10 numbers using lottery method. That is one of the methods for picking up the sample, that random sampling. There would also be other methods of choosing this random sampling. Fish bowl draw method. Fish bowl draw method. This is very simple method through which the elements from the population can be selected randomly. In this method, the name of each element of finite population written in a slip or paper. Just now whatever that I mentioned, isn't it? Just take a slip, give the number to the population 1 to 100 if it is 100, then pick out the required number from that particular bowl. Fish bowl. Fish bowl means, pretty well, fish bowl. And more of today is Sunday. There may be fishes, there may be chickens, there may be muttons also.
So, vegetarian.
You are vegetarian. Anyway, because since this fish bowl is used, I'm just mentioning, today is also associated with this kind of dish in the houses. So fish bowl, it's a bowl, you take a bowl, you put all those slips, the numbers of the population, then pick out the required number of candidates. That is one of the methods that you can employ for picking up the sample under random sampling technique. The second one is using table of random numbers. The random tables, all available with the statistics department. Tables are there. Already prepared tables. You can also use those random tables, and from the tables you can also pick out the sample. So all these random tables are available with the statistics department, and you find Tippett, Yates, Fisher, and these are the people who have developed those random tables, random sampling tables. You can take up one of these tables and then choose your sample from that particular tables, isn't it? Because they have done this kind of job, and your job is choosing only from that particular table, which are already prepared. the random numbers are prepared in those tables, which are in the form of tables. And from that, whatever that you require, the number required, you can use those tables which are prepared by Tippett, Yates, and Fisher. Also, of course, here also given some kind of illustration is also here. Procedure by an example. First of all, we reproduce the first 30 sets of Tippett's numbers. The Tippett numbers in 4 digits are given here, and that is illustrated because these tables are also available in the statistic department, or it may be available with education department, also psychology department. And most of the cases, normally we don't see the tables. We don't see the tables. We just use this lottery method. Most of the cases, lottery methods, by using our wisdom. We use the wisdom only. Then we pick out the sample randomly, which will also represent the population. The third method is, if you have any difficulty with regard to these two methods, lottery method, then of course the tables, random tables, then you can instruct, if you are good at computers, you give instruction to the computer. Computer will give you the numbers required by you. Nowadays, most of the researchers are using only this method. You just instruct or give instructions to the computer. It will give you the numbers which are required by you for your sampling. The best method is that only. Without any kind of effort, with minimum effort, you can get the sample. In the sense, so which should be chosen or included in the sample. That kind of information you are getting by using this kind of computer determined randoms. Then the next one is stratified random sampling technique. The title itself indicates, still this is a better one than this random sampling. Stratified. Before this, let us try to understand more interesting thing or more interesting method that is known as systematic sampling. We have seen only random sampling. There's still we can systemize that random sampling, which we can call it as systematic sampling. That means if the students are there in a class having 40 students, you want to take up 10 or 15 students from that particular 40 size class. What you do is, if you want to take up 20% of that 40 number class, then how much you are going to get? 20 students. Is it 20? No. 20% means 40 is 100. Then how much would be the 20% of 40?
8.
Yeah, 8. Yes. If you want to take up that 8 students from this 40 number class, then what you have to do is, you can arrange them in order 1 to 40. Then the first candidate is 8th number. The second candidate is 16th number. The third candidate is nth candidate, 24th number. Then next you can add 8.
32.
Yes, like this. So you are getting 8 candidates. Am I right? Nth number you are selecting. First candidate is at 8. Second is at 16, because you are adding 8 to the numbers, isn't it?
Yes, sir. But only 5 we will be getting. When
Yeah, if it is 5, you can, yeah, you will be getting only 5.
5. Till 40.
20% means how much? You said only 8, isn't it? You only said 8. 20% of that party is 40%. Party is, you said 8, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Anyway, doesn't matter. If it is 5, think that is 5, isn't it? The first is the candidate is 5th number. Then the second one is 10th. Third one is 15th. Fourth one is 20th candidate. 25th candidate. 30th candidate. 35th candidate. And 40th candidate. Nth number only you are selecting, because this is highly systematic than that random sampling method, which you are just following the lottery kind of method. But here is some kind of sanctity, scientific logic. some logic key is given because all the numbers are arranged in order. From that, you are taking up the nth number, isn't it? That is known as systematic sampling. It's a better one than that random sampling technique. Still better one is stratified random sampling technique. Stratified. Stata means, so what's the time now? It's about 2:59. Yes, 15 minutes, still 16 minutes to go. Let us complete this. Okay. Yes, stratified random sampling means the whole population will be divided into different status. Different status. Isn't it? Subpopulations. So the whole area is divided into different sub areas. Still sub areas. Still sub areas, isn't it? That is different, divided or divided. There are divisions, many divisions, isn't it, in the population. So every strata has to be represented means then we have to use this stratified random sampling technique. So you have to divide the whole area into different status. It may be sub areas. Even the sub areas are to be again subdivide them. So from each sub area, how much sample is required? That you have to collect from that sub area or strata. Strata means classification. You are classifying the total population into different status. From each strata, you are collecting the representative sample. That means all the status of the population are represented in your sample. Is it clear? And most of the cases, my dear friends, you will use stratified random sampling technique in our researches. Because this is the best one than other things. There is scientific kind of activity and all the status are represented and almost representative sample is coming into the sample by using this stratified random sampling technique. And again, still further, let us is divided into two types. Proportionate stratified random sampling. Proportionate stratified random sampling and disproportionate stratified random sampling technique. That means, say for example, if there are 10 to 15 status that are divided, if you want to take up 10% of the each strata, from each strata you would like to take up 10%. So one strata may be having 100 population. In the second strata, you may be having 200 population. Third strata, it may be 250. Like this, the population in each strata is varying. So if it is 10% means the area that is having 100, you are getting only 10. In the area, in the second area where you have the population 200 means you are getting 20. In third area where you are having 250 population, there you are getting 25 persons. Proportionately taken. And the disproportionate stratified random sampling technique, that means you are not going to use this proportionate sampling technique. Then this disproportionate stratified random sampling bears a similarity with the proportionate stratified random sampling. The only difference is that the substrata of the down sample are not necessarily distributed according to their proportionate weight in the population from which they were randomly selected. So you are not following proportionate kind of ailment. For this, a disproportionate stratified random sampling technique, where there is no proportionate kind of sampling, then you can call it as disproportionate, isn't it? Somewhere you will be taking 10%, in other area you may be taking 8%, in some other area you will be taking 5% also. So it's not proportionately drawn. The sample is not drawn proportionately. There may be many reasons for that also, isn't it? The population is not studied properly by the researcher. There may be adding in the population. There may be some population left out also. There may be some migration also. People will leave also that area. So these are the various reasons. So therefore, don't go for this disproportionate stratified random sampling technique. You can use proportionate stratified random sampling technique for your research. The best one. Next one is area or cluster sampling. You can divide the whole area into clusters. Quite often you might have heard cluster villages. 3 to 4 villages are clubbed into cluster villages. Or 3 villages clubbed into cluster villages. So cluster sampling is another important method of probability sampling. Normally, cluster sampling can be utilized when large-scale surveys of political, religious, and social behavior are easily conducted. So for that purpose, large surveys, when you want to conduct the large surveys, there you are going to use this cluster sampling. So you are adding 1 or 2 or 3 areas into a cluster. Like this, you would be finding in each mandal, if there are 30 villages, and you may club them into, for each cluster there will be 3 villages, means there would be 10 clusters. Am I right? Each cluster will be having 3 villages. There's a cluster. If there are 30 villages in a mandal, then you will be having 10 clusters, which are originally 30 villages, which are coupled into 10 cluster villages. From that, you can pick out the sample. Okay, na? Divide the area into number of smaller, non-overlapping areas, and then to randomly select a number of these smaller areas, usually called clusters, with the ultimate sample consisting of all or sample of units in these small clusters. And again, my dear friends, among these 10 clusters in a mandal, you may choose 3 clusters. Among these clusters, because you cannot study 10 clusters, isn't it? Select 3 clusters which are not overlapping. So from these 3 clusters, you can follow this randomization method and then select the candidates. You select the candidates from 3 clusters which are selected by you using random sampling there. So you will be studying or picking up the sample from those 3 clusters and then finally include them in our sample. So most of the cases, this kind of sampling technique will be used in political surveys, religious surveys, and also whatever that has happened, the election surveys also. Do you think all those election surveys are okay? All have gone in Andhra Pradesh. All the survey reports have gone wrong in Andhra Pradesh, barring 1 or 2. Barring 1 or 2, there would be nearly 30 to 36 survey reports. All these 30 to 36 survey reports have gone except 2. That KK survey, exactly he told you will be getting 160 assembly seats in favor of TDP. That exactly happened. Almost it reaches 164, isn't it? Except that all the other surveys have gone wrong. That means people of the surveys, those people have not properly studied. They have
Surveys
not
are
collected
always
the
manipulated.
opinions. Huh?
Surveys are always manipulated.
Yes, certainly maybe might have manipulated. And we also
Sir,
suspect.
actually, sir, one
Yes,
thing, sir.
yes,
Sir, even the sampling also in the elections, right? So
yes,
many of the people won't be telling what they wanted to, whom they
yes,
wanted to
yes,
vote actually. They will
yes,
tell
exactly.
something, they will do some other thing.
Yes,
So we can't
exactly.
completely rely on this, the result of the sampling
The
also.
exit
How to
polls,
select the sampling also is difficult.
yes, exactly. This will happen. And also some of these people will not collect the data also. You are right, Mr. Sai. They cannot
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
disclose because that's confidential. Okay, na? So by that way, these might have gone wrong also. Some other people might have manipulated also, isn't it? So all these things will also happen, sir. So therefore, cluster sampling method will be used when you want to take up the large surveys. Then area sampling technique. Area sampling technique method is used. Complete frame of reference is available when the complete frame of reference is available. The total picture, the map of that area. You have to collect the map of that area. Then only you can have this area sampling technique. Any researcher should have that map, complete picture of the population of that area where you are going to take up a study or execute your study. The total area under investigation is divided into small sub-areas which are sampled at random or by some restricted random process. Each of the chosen sub-areas is then finally inspected and enumerated and may form a frame for further sampling if desired. That means sub areas. Otherwise, you cannot collect data from all the sub areas, even though that is sub area. That will also be huge unless you divide still sub areas to
This
small
is like
units.
cluster, no, sir. Again.
Yeah. Because even though here, because the big area is very big, even the sub area is still very big. You cannot manage also. Still, you have to make it another sub area from the sub units. So from the last unit, sub unit, you have to pick out the sample. Cluster consists of, in other words, you can also call it as cluster, geographical cluster sampling method. We can also call this particular area sampling technique geographical cluster sampling. Geographical area. That means the cluster consists of geographic areas. In this area sampling, where clusters consist of geographic areas such as the districts, housing blocks, or townships. They are all geographic areas. So we can also call it as geographical cluster sampling. So from the last subunit only, you have to pick out the sample because otherwise you cannot manage if the area is very bigger, isn't it? Say, for example, if you start from the district, you have revenue divisions, you have mandals, you have gram panchayats. And from gram panchayats, if there are 6 villages in gram panchayats, maybe some hamlets would also be there, some tandas would also be there. If there are 6 tandas in a gram panchayat, isn't it? That would also be a bigger population for you. That's the reason why you try to come to very small unit of population. From that small unit or geographical area, you can pick out the sample, isn't it? And all these kind of sampling methods will be followed by in sociology or social anthropology or social sciences mostly, isn't it? If they want to study the social structures, social relationships, so therefore those people, because those people have to depend on the geographical areas. For that purpose, this area sampling technique is included in this. Then multi-stage sampling. Multi-stage sampling, yes. Multi-stage sampling, there would be many stages. For example, if you want to take up a bigger study, for example, if you take up or if you take your study your study wants to have the clear whole picture of our country, India. India is having 29 states, maybe having 6 union territories, isn't it? Is it 29 states and 6 union territories?
Sir, I have one doubt, sir. Can I ask, sir?
Please.
Sir, you are telling about the sampling, right, sir? So,
Yeah.
when we select some people in the sampling, whether they need to have some qualification or just randomly take the people, like if suppose stratified or cluster, just randomly take them, or they should have some qualification
So
or
again, qualification, when the qualification comes, your problem, if you want to collect data from doctors, you collect data only from doctors only who are qualified, isn't it? Say for general population, If you want to study the socio-economic status of the people in a particular area, socio-economic status of the people in a particular geographical area, then all the people of that area is the population. Whether they are doctors or lawyers or teachers or somebody else. Right? Got it?
Yes, sir. Like my doubt was like anyone can be
Yes,
in the sample.
anyone who was there in that particular area, it depends again on the topic. If your topic is related to only doctors or teachers, you have to select this random sampling technique only from the teachers.
Okay, based upon the research
Yeah.
we are doing,
Your
we need
problem,
to
research
select
problem. Yes, based upon the research problem. Your client is, say, for example, I want to study the behavior of students of class 10th of Hyderabad districts. Say, for example, again I tell you, see, family planning methods. What is their attitude towards family planning? People. That means if you want to take up a large sample of the society, then if you want to collect their attitude or study their attitudes, whoever there in that particular society, irrespective of educated or uneducated, and all those people will be coming into the fold of the sample. The opinion of the people. People may be educated or not educated, literate or not literate, whoever it may be, whoever there in that particular geographical area was selected randomly. In that random, the doctors would be there, lawyers would be there, uneducated would be there, semi-literate would also be there. Am I right? Because the problem is on the attitude of the people towards family planning. Sai.
Yes, sir. Understood, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Suppose
Thank you
if
so much.
I want to know the attitude of teachers towards usage of computers in the classrooms for their teaching. My sample is the teachers. Am I right? Because there's a specific client I'm referring to, because they are the people who has to represent, who will be giving their opinions on the usage of computers in the classrooms. So therefore, your study is, if you want to study the opinions of the teachers towards digital lessons, and your sample has to be picked up from the teachers only. Or if you want to pick up the sample from the students with regard to their perceptions on the digital lessons, Here I am mentioning the study would be like this. Perceptions of the students on the digital lessons, specifically mentioning perceptions of the students towards the digital lessons. That means you have to pick up the sample only from the students. That students may be, again you have to specify, that student may be class 10th, or it may be 9th, or it may be 8th. That you have to again separate it also. Isn't it? Sorry, okay? Again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Then multi-stage sampling means at a different stages. Then if you want to take up a bigger study covering the whole country, then starting from the states, country, to the states, to the districts, to the revenue divisions, to the mandals, to the gram panchayats. Everywhere you are following this random sampling techniques. You cannot take up all the states. There you are filtering, only taking up a few states. And from those selected states, you may be again selecting the districts. And from those selected districts, you may be referring to, yes. So all right, my dear friends, it seems somebody is also referring to me. The time is over. Thank you. My time is up. It's about 1:18 minutes. Rest of the things we can discuss in the next class. That's all about for today's class. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Now it's the time for you for lunch, am I right?
No lunch, sir. We are on liquid diet. If we take heavy diet, again we'll sleep in the class.
Who is talking that one? Mrs. Not that just only just example, not that. Because the symptoms of that yawning. So see,
Yes, sir.
not that heavy data.
Yes.
Now you are going to have heavy data because this is the lunch. What is the difference between brunch and lunch?
Brunch starts from the morning breakfast till evening.
It includes breakfast as well as lunch also. That is brunch,
Brunch.
isn't it? But you have not taken the brunch, only light item was taken in the morning. For breaking your fast. Because already there was about nearly 10 hours, isn't it? Lost night meal to the morning that you are going to break. So that's a breakfast. Anyway, have a nice time. See you in the next class, next Saturday and Sunday. That's
Thank you.
all about for this class. Thank you.